So what is the best investment for an economic collapse? What's the best way of preserving whatever wealth you have during an economic crisis, an economic downturn, when things start falling apart? Folks, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and yes, revisiting this topic yet again, because as time goes by, as we learn more, there's certain things that are confirmed. I've been talking recently with some folks in Argentina going through very hard times right now, so all of that is going to be shared with you in this video. Also, as always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, consider doing so. That will be much appreciated, and you won't miss any new videos if you hit the notification bell button. If you want to learn even more about all of this, remember that you do have my book published, Surviving the Economic Collapse, going through the economic collapse of Argentina, sharing my experience with you, and street survival skills, some of those skills you definitely want to develop. So I come from a place of actually having gone through this stuff. I have these bills to remind me of just that. This is something that most folks doing this kind of content haven't actually experienced themselves. I actually remember having these bills in my hand and thinking, man, spend it right now because it will be worthless. You know, we were leaving back then and we couldn't carry a whole lot else with us. But I remember that thought. I remember having this in my hand and thinking, we have to spend this. Back then it was like $50, maybe $20, $30, $20 each of these, give or take. Now this is completely worthless. The only value it has for me is just that, the memory of what it feels like when money completely loses value in your own hands. So let's get to this right away. Number one, first thing you want to have when things are falling apart, and it's probably the best investment for you and your portfolio, is actually food. Yeah, I know it's not actually an investment, but I cannot avoid mentioning this because it is so true. When things really start falling apart, when that starts losing value by the day, people rush and buy stuff, specifically this stuff. They buy food because they know that without this, you're screwed. And yeah, you can go with Spam or some other can. I'm just using this as a representation, maybe, you know, lentils, rice, pasta. But that's the thing that people become desperate for, and that's what has the highest value in the market during those moments of absolute panic and desperation. Could you even sell that for a lot afterwards if it has a complete collapse and breakdown of society? Yeah, probably yes. But even though it's not an investment by definition, it's the thing that you definitely want to put more money on from the start and not wait around. Number two, I will say, yes, having some cash. And it's ironic that I just mentioned how this is completely worthless, and it is. Maybe one day it will have some collector value. Maybe that collector value will be much more than what it is right now. But for me, the symbolism of it, the reminder of how things quickly fall apart, that is definitely valuable for me. But during the initial stages of a full-blown economic collapse, a large, not what you saw in the US recently with the banks and so on, but I'm talking about true panic, widespread, everyone trying to convert this into something that is actually useful. Well, if you do have this in your hand, instead of having it in the bank, you could go through that same experience I went through, which is, I have to spend this right now. And I can actually do that. I run into a store, I buy as much as I can with as much cash as I have with me, and that's gonna be a lot better than just seeing this locked melt away in a bank account. And I know that the Argentine peso is very problematic. With the US dollar, the euro, other currencies are not as likely to fall as drastically quickly, but you want to have some cash in hand for those first initial stages, because this is what will allow you to invest in whatever else you believe will hold value better when you see things falling apart quickly, okay? Number three, anything of value, and closely linked to this in terms of real estate. Talking about true investments now. What are some of the best investments when preparing for an economic collapse? If you have a small apartment that can be in a good place and can be easily rented, when stuff starts falling apart, anything that is brick and mortar, anything that is land, yeah, that is tangible, that is solid. And we'll talk more about solid, tangible things, but one of the things that definitely is a great investment, especially if you get it at a reasonable price, and especially if it's something that it can be rented away as the currency keeps devaluating and depreciating, that is gonna be probably adjusted to inflation and will keep making an actual real profit in the true sense of an investment. But yeah, it's not just about real estate. It's about, because buying a house or an apartment is not exactly in everyone's budget, so as to invest and preserve wealth. But stuff like even used cars, a used car, for example, all across Latin America, it's one of the things that people buy because, man, you got yourself a car, well, it will depreciate, but it won't depreciate as fast as some of these other things. And especially in the interesting times that we're living now, in which we don't know at what time the only cars that will be available will have a chip that will not be available to drive as we wish, when we want. Well, even more so, any reliable vehicle, there's certain brands, Honda, Toyota, those are usually your Corollas, right? Anything that is dead reliable, super solid, Toyota Hilux, a Honda Civic, a CRV, utilitarian sport little vehicle. These are things that hold value very well as time goes by. And if you're careful, man, those things may even end up having a much more interesting value when things become even more digital and controlled by the man than they already are right now. But even stuff like bicycles, if you buy a good bicycle and this starts losing value, well, that thing will still be of value. Number 4, moving now into precious metals. Of course, gold and silver. One thing I will say, gold is a lot lighter than this stuff when it starts accumulating. But people will mostly end up investing their first precious metals in form of silver. And it's a great way to preserve. Some of these I actually bought with these bills. So imagine, I went to a store and exchanged one of these now useless bills. I actually did this several times over the years. And I left the store with maybe this exact same one. I won't lie to you, I don't remember if it was this one or maybe some of the others, but I did buy several Eagles with these exact same bills. Think how crazy that is. This useless, this still silver. Actually experiencing that. Man, I'm telling you, there's a different level to things, and how you end up understanding and the comprehension you have of how historically this has been the case for millions of years now, but thousands, yes, sure, thousands of years. It just gets the point a lot more across when you do that yourself. In terms of silver and gold, just keep it simple. You will probably be familiar with the idea of junk silver, your 1964 and previous American coins are 90% silver, and that's a great way, but you have to be careful with how much you're paying for this. Don't pay a lot more than spot. Usually the best way to go would be something like this, your silver Eagles. Even better if you find it, and you're not going to be buying a whole lot, you're buying maybe a couple. I came across some of these for a very reasonable price, and it was just a couple bucks more, really just a few bucks more than buying it without the casing. And people will think, oh, it's useless. Well, it's usually maybe for you, but this is a PCGS rated M69 coin for strike, and it's encased. It will have it already has a much higher collector's value than the same thing if I had bought it without the casing. So it's not always the case that this is just a little piece of plastic that makes no difference. No, sometimes it does. Now, I would buy this as close to spot as I can. If I'm buying in bulk, maybe just buy a monster box of just your Eagles. But it is true that some people will place a lot of value in these things, and maybe not going for this one, your Morgans with your rating and so on, unless you specifically want to invest in numismatics. If that's the case, go nuts with that, but understand what you're doing and don't overpay more than spot if you can help it at all. Okay, that's something that sometimes people fall into, and you want to avoid as much as you can. Number 5, quickly on the toes of precious metals, it is this stuff right there. And you're probably more familiar with the physicalized version of what I just showed you, which is this stuff, right? Yeah, talking about Bitcoin. I understand that a lot of people don't know exactly what this is, and this is just a little toy. This is just a coin. The real Bitcoin is here. Well, actually, it's in the ledger, but this is how you access it with your key, your crypto key. And my advice is, if you're gonna spend maybe $100, use the referral that you have there below from my Coinbase referral link. Coinbase is the largest, safest way to buy crypto. If you buy $100, I think they give you $110 still using the referral, and you get $10 as a kickback as well, which is always nice. But that would be my first advice if you're thinking of putting some money in Bitcoin. But if you're going to be spending more money into that, then you want to have your own separate private key. The safest way to do that is with a hardware wallet. This is a Ledger Nano S, if I remember correctly. I'll leave links for this below as well. This is how you have absolute control over your crypto, and no one can mess with that. But the responsibility is also all yours. So no one will touch that, no matter what. That's gonna be on you, but the responsibility of keeping that safe, that's on you as well. And I also have to say, of all the things that I'm talking about here, maybe the safest, best way, or the more practical way, or the way that has been proven to be most useful for people to save themselves from inflation and hyperinflation, honestly, it really has been this. It really has been Bitcoin, because it's so easy once you have it set up to buy and sell it and put it into any account anywhere in the world. That is something you really want when things start falling apart. All right. So yeah, number 6, guns and more guns. I just saw John Wick, the fourth one, not all that great, more than that in the other channel that I have regarding movies and such. But yes, guns. This is something I was talking about with folks in Argentina, that you have something like this, you have a used Glock, well, depending on how much you paid for that, but you can actually, it's almost like gold and silver, right? You can convert it even more so. I will make a point about how a used Glock that you paid maybe $300, $350, whatever it is, $400, depending on the market you're in. You should know your market well, right? But let's say you bought yourself a used police surplus Glock back in the day for $300. Maybe you sell that today for $400. It is almost like money in the bank. It's almost that quick to exchange a used Glock for, and I'm talking specifically about Glock because nothing sells in the used market as well as a Glock. There's always someone that is game for a used Glock in good condition, and most of them usually are, or they're easily repaired because they are pretty reliable and tough. So and I've done this myself, and it's actually been one of the best ways that, without even realizing, I remember going into a gun store and finding a box of used high powers, picking some of the nicer ones, and I bought Brown FM high power for the equivalent of what I have here, right? For maybe 150, 200 pesos. For 200 pesos in price of pre-dollar times, right? In pre-collapse times, that was one of the best things you could do, because that was something that later on you sold for whatever equivalent in dollars it was. It just preserves its value. And on the same line, stuff like magazines, ammunition, these are things that do work very well for having stuff that will be valuable once things fall apart. Now, there's another level to this, which is the investment firearms, the guns that are valuable no matter what as time goes by. Stuff like my beloved Colt Python right here. This is a gun that, yeah, there's always going to be a market for certain collector firearms. We're talking about the collector market now, and this is something that the elite, the rich, do themselves. They buy paintings, they buy art, they buy things that, yeah, it's a way of having that wealth in a physical format that years later it may appreciate in value, or at the very least hold to it quite nicely. My advice, and I'm not an expert on this in any way, my advice is buy stuff that you know people want and buy in as good condition as you can afford. Maybe the best exponent of just that is this HK. Original box, original everything, right? Perfect condition, and your manual, your accessories. This is the ideal thing. P7, M13. extra mag. The mag alone is worth a freaking fortune. But this is how you really want to do collector stuff. In great condition. Same thing applies to coins. The coins that have a certain value, your Morgans, it will depend a lot on this. What is it? MS64? Okay, yeah, sure. Worth whatever hundreds or thousands or whatever amount of dollars it is worth. But the condition that it is in will dictate that quite significantly. Last one, number 7, and this is something that I was just talking about before. Knives. Again, somewhat on the same line as collector guns, but certain knives hold their value very well. ZT. This is actually my EDC knife right now. It's one of my EDC knives. I love this thing, but I also know that it will have a lot of value in the future. Now, for me, I like it, I use it, and I have other ZTs that I have set aside, put away in their boxes, unused condition, because those are more investing, right? Those are more collecting knives for me. Is collecting the same as investing? It may be. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, but know what you're doing. Also, one of the things that may end up going up in price more than you imagine is stuff like this. I bought in the past knives when I saw them for ridiculously low prices. Again, because of my experience, because of what I understand regarding how this loses value, when I saw something like this for $3, dude, yeah, give me 10 of those. $10, $3? Yeah, sure, I'll take 10 of those. Those are super nice knives, very decent. And as years go by, it will have a nice amount of value. And if not, man, yeah, I can definitely have that in my gear. Stuff that is so cheap and still very good quality. I don't remember if I even paid less than $2 for these. It was one of these sales. The Halterford brand was just getting started, and these were under $3 for sure. Glock knife, $23. Yeah, these are things that are now already going up in price. So my point is, when you see stuff that is quality, stuff that is maybe necessary at some point, like a good knife like that, and it's ridiculously low price, probably you want to have a few of those set aside as a form of investment. And if it has use in itself, such as a gun, yeah, you can also use that to defend yourself. You can use that as a very useful, valuable tool in times of crisis, but it has value on its own. Guys, I hope you learned something today. See you in our next video. Take care.